You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez.
In your communities, in Chicago.
On WCPT 820.
And, of course, across the country, we just spoke to our friend Matt McNeil from Minneapolis. We had Dan Schaefer from Wisconsin. And now we have Kaylee Peterson out of Idaho. Kaylee, how are you doing, my friend?
I am well rested and ready for the next year. How are you doing, Patti?
Well, neither one of those things. I can't say either one of those things with a full throat, full chested way. I don't know if I'm fully rested. I don't know if I'm ready, but I appreciate your commitment to that. For folks who are catching up on our conversations with Kaylee Peterson, she ran for Congress out of Idaho, and Idaho has decided to be basically ground zero for what happens next when it comes to loving who you want to love. Tell us what's happening, Kaylee.
Oh, my goodness. It just never stops. One of the very first action items was to print a bill that would officially make same-sex marriage not valid in the state of Idaho. So it redefines marriage in order to specifically exclude our LGBTQIA community.
So in Idaho, same-sex marriage was banned in 2006 as part of the Defense of Marriage Act. So have you got a handle on what their argument is as to why I guess they're asking for the decision by the Supreme Court that Obergefell and Hodges that any state banning same-sex marriage violates the 14th Amendment. So I don't know what their argument is. Have you heard anything about what they're trying to basically present ultimately to the Supreme Court?
It sounds a little bit like they did with the trigger bans, which is they put these things in place so that if the federal courts then come to the decision, Idaho leads the way. And it's unbelievably dangerous. We saw it with the trigger bans and the abortion laws. After the Supreme Court actually struck down Roe, legislators were saying, well, I voted for it because I thought it would make me popular. I never thought Roe would actually fall. And so that's the reason these bills are so incredibly dangerous, is we don't know what the federal courts have lined up, and this puts our already very vulnerable LGBTQIA community at great risk. They're worried their families are going to be torn apart.
Yeah, and I guess the argument is they want the states to be able to, at least the state of Iowa, to make the decision what the marriage laws are. This is just so frustrating, but of course, I mean, there are things. I know there's one at the federal level now as far as a ban on trans athletes participating in girls' sports. I believe it specifically, and I'm sure that this is going to be happening all over the country. Rather than here's the question, right, Kaylee? To anybody in Idaho, anybody who wants these kinds of laws or these sorts of decisions to be overturned at the Supreme Court level, how does that affect your life? Well, tell me. I thought we were doing this for the price of eggs, Kaylee.
Exactly. You can't claim to be a nation that's all about freedom and this rugged individualism while you try and stamp out the very individualism you claim to support. And it's just, not only is it wholly un-American, but at the same time, when I talk to rural communities, they're worried about their kids going to school. They're worried about paycheck to paycheck. They're worried about how they're going to afford their health insurance, which then denies them if they get the increasingly common rates of cancer going on. I mean, these are not the issues that the American public are dealing with on a daily basis. And it's such a distraction, and it's so damaging to the people who live it here.
How are the liberals, how are the Dems doing in Idaho? I mean, I think that this is the kind of thing where you know that you have to show up. You have to, people like you need to run to have these conversations, to elevate the messaging of how Republicans are not doing anything to make your life fundamentally better or protecting your actual rights. What kind of conversations are you having with fellow Democrats in Idaho?
I mean, this was a crushing election. There were so many Democrats who had so much hope, and also our local candidates, our local Democratic candidates, who put in just an unbelievable amount of work for absolutely there's no money or power in Democratic politics in this state. It is really a labor of love. So I know that there was a lot of just exhaustion and wondering what's next. But I think we immediately go back to the drawing board. And I think I've been really, really lucky to work in the rural communities and to see where a lot of our issues are, where our messaging isn't landing, how we're having difficulty getting to certain communities with important information and education. And so I think that's where we really have to focus over the next 12 months is creating a communication structure that gets the Democratic messaging out there that we are the party of working class people. We are the party of freedom. We are the party that gets things done for the American public.
You mean you don't think that limiting flags in Idaho public schools is getting something done? This is the other thing that they're working on. What?
I mean, these are schools that have water heaters burst and asbestos and ceiling collapses and flooding. I mean, these are schools where children are riding a bus 2 hours and that are getting just completely defunded with the voucher schemes that they're trying to put up this year. But yeah, no, the flags are really the issue.
Yeah, we gotta make sure that there aren't any rainbows in classrooms. What are some of the big races? I mean, do you have big races coming up? I think there's races everywhere in the country, obviously at every level in 2025. What are you focusing your efforts on? I know you talked about messaging and communication and things like that, but are there races that you're looking at that we can lend our support to and amplify?
I think right now we're just working on getting the Democratic Party together. I think right now it's just keeping our local party together and identifying the candidates that we really want to put forward and people who are ready for the fight, because it's gotten bigger than ever, and I think we have.
Oh, I think we lost Kaylee.
Federal level. We
lost you there for a second. What was that last part? Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I think it's just trying to prepare at the local level for what the federal courts have in store for us. I think is really our big focus is the legislature this year.
Do you have any thoughts when you're watching these conversations about the jockeying for head of the DNC? Ben Wickler has done a masterful job in Wisconsin, and I've been a volunteer with the Wisconsin Dems. Do you have any thoughts on who you'd like to see? Because he's talked a lot about making sure we're going to rural areas, and I think that's got to mean the states that we sort of gave up on and figure, well, it's never going to flip the other way.
100%. I think that's what I know for people like me who are in situations like Idaho, having someone who is really in touch with rural communities and the specific challenges that we face in those communities is so important. And this isn't saying that rural communities are more important than urban issues. It's not saying that one should be held above the other. But I think we have failed to try and figure out how to successfully reach and get our message to the people that need it most. And I'm hoping that that's what he will bring.
I agree with you. Now, we started this conversation. You said that you were rested and ready to go. What does that look like for Kaylee Peterson, former candidate for Congress? Like give us a little bit of some of your tips. Do you have any tips for us, like for taking care of ourselves? I'm just talking to everybody. I'm trying to figure out what everyone else's coping mechanisms are right now.
I don't know if it's the best coping mechanism because I ran in 22 and I just completely ran through 24. So I took 3 years on the road, and then as soon as the election was over, I came down with a respiratory infection and I was just laid out in bed for 3 weeks. So I got some kind of forced rest, and it gave me time to plan what the next steps are and how I can be as helpful as possible to the Idaho Democratic movement.
Oof. Well, one, I'm glad that you've recovered. I'm sorry that you went through that. But basically, your advice is work yourself until you're exhausted, fatigued, and ill, so that you're forced to rest. Mandatory rest. Don't do that again.
I guess maybe that's not the best message for everyone else.
I'm teasing.
But I will say, I'm only able to do what I do because I am surrounded by incredible people. I surround myself with people who have the respect and integrity and accountability that we're looking for in government, and being able to surround myself with those people and do something that makes my community just a little bit better in whatever form, shape, way that is. It's not politics for everybody, but getting out into your community in a positive way, in any way, has been really helpful to get through these really difficult times.
Wow. Is there anything that you see the Republicans and your governor, I mean, in the General Assembly and at the executive level that, I see that, he's touting like affordable housing as one of the initiatives. Is there hope that there's I don't know, because it sounds like they really just want to do the marriage equality or the marriage equality overturn. And are there any lights of hope in Idaho when it comes to the policy of the Republicans?
I am very concerned. Affordable housing is fantastic. I mean, we are an incredibly quickly growing state, and so housing is a huge issue right now. But I also know that he's making recommendations that would cut funding for childcare, which is something that is unbelievably difficult to get. It's something I became a stay-at-home mom simply because I couldn't find affordable childcare. So it's really personal. And the issues that are coming forward just are not issues that will make my state any safer or increase the quality of life.
Oh, man. And one of the big things that Donald won on was immigration, and we have to make sure that we have to round all these folks up and put them in detention centers. And some folks, I guess there are some people who voted for him that were like, well, I didn't think, I'm a business owner, and our industry relies on cheap labor, and undocumented workers. Are you hearing anything from any industry, ag or otherwise, folks going, well, wait a minute, we can't afford to lose these workers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge issue. And I've had the privilege of working with the Latino community here, and there's a really proud history of migrant workers in our state. And so I struggle to say that that's the only value that they have. But the agricultural industry is bolstered by migrant workers. And I know that there's legislation in place that would try and create a kind of quicker immigration system for those workers to come to America so that we can support our agricultural and our small farmers. But I'm not seeing that legislation get as much attention as it should.
Yeah, I would imagine. Oh, man. And how can we stay up to date on the stuff that you're doing? Obviously, conversations with you regularly whenever we can. If anything comes up that you're like, hey, you guys should know about this, please don't hesitate to reach out to Jerry. But what can we do to stay up to date on how we can support Dems in Idaho?
Well, so my social media will be back up and running, and I'll have updates on my website so that I can just kind of keep everybody connected and mobilized in whatever way helps the most. So that's Kaylee4Congress, spelled out, .com, KAYLEEFOR Congress.com. And I'll make sure that at the very least, we are holding these people in our state legislature accountable for what they're actually doing to our communities.
Oh, man, thank you so much for that. And I'm glad that you'll keep people connected and again, engaged. And we love talking to you. I really am so proud to know you and support the work that you do and to continue to develop this relationship and communicate with folks what's happening in Idaho, Kaylee.
Thank you so much for just giving attention and a platform to what's happening, because it's not just happening here, it's happening all over our country, and it means a lot. It's been tremendously helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. We're going to keep going. We got this, Kaylee. I mean, as far as keep fighting. That's the part we got, is fighting. The rest of it, I can't. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Have a good night and keep taking care of yourself, okay? Keep healing.
Thank you. You too, Patty. I'll talk soon.
Talk to you later.